Spinning. There we go. All right, here they come.
Boy.
Great.
Yeah, look at the turnout.
Hello. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Wednesday, May 25th, 9:30 in the morning. Today is a special day. This is a career panel for those of you who are interested in the graphic arts. And many of you I see on the call are graduating in the next 6 months, within the next 6 months. Many are actually graduating this spring. I'd like to say special congratulations to those of you who are completing a degree this coming quarter. I believe, if my calculation is correct, for those of you who are completing a degree this quarter, you have completed this degree almost entirely online, if not completely online, because most of you started it, 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic. So congratulations. Well, I have a panel here that is comprised of a number of folks who are local graphic designers and international, if we can qualify that at this point. But I'd like to let them have a chance to introduce themselves, tell you, so if for the panelists, please tell us your name, where you work, your role, and I'll give at the end, I'll give the little surprise about the connection between all these panelists, or at least majority of the panelists. So I want to start off with Eddie. He's in the top corner. We're just kind of moving around, and you pass it along to whoever you want to pass it to, Eddie.
Yeah, my name is Edward Ariscato. I'm a UI artist / visual designer for 343 Industries. We work and make the game Halo. And I guess I'll pass this off to Cody.
Hey, I'm Cody Sershan. I'm currently doing packaging and branding for the Pokemon trading card game. And I'll toss it over to my friend and former coworker, Gia.
Hi, I'm Gia. I'm a graphic designer for Zoomies. I work in the brand marketing department. I'll pass it over to Tracy.
I'm Tracy. I am a creative artist at Sound Publishing, which is the company that does the Everett Herald, located headquarters here in Everett. I'll pass it to our fifth member, whose name I don't remember.
Stacy.
Hey,
no worries. Hey, I'm Stacy, she, her. I am a visual graphic designer and illustrator. I own my own business. I work with a few other folks in it. We mostly focus on like brand development, brand identity, and visual identity. We typically work with local organizations doing like grassroots social justice work. But we do have clients that are like Subaru or T-Mobile every now and then. So that's us.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, folks, for being here. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedule to provide our students with some information about the creative world. So the little detail I wanted to share with everybody is that Eddie, Tracy, Cody, all three of those graduated from Edmonds College with the visual communications degree. Gia, she graduated with EAA and transferred over to Cornish, and then completed her 4-year degree over at Cornish School of the Arts over in Seattle. And then Stacy is our latest member who joined the organization, who I have association with through the community in the Asian American Pacific Islander community through various organizations. And I invited her to be part of the committee because of the fact that she is, for the most part, self-taught. She basically was a writing major, went into journalism, and then got into graphic design out of a necessity and a need that she saw to fulfill that role. And so she basically, so all these 5 folks here come into this room with a level of experience in the creative field and different aspects and different relationships. Eddie, if you didn't notice or if you didn't catch wind, Eddie's currently right now and he's doing his work remotely entirely. And he has, his news is that he's going to be actually got a permanent transfer and be able to work remotely. So what I'd like to do is I want to throw out the question. Anybody who has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll relate to them. Or if you want to unmute yourself, you can. But, the idea is for this panel is to give all the current students some idea of what's going on in the real world. So I'll just throw the question out there. We see where it goes. For the panelists, who wants to talk about their experience about working remotely in in the past 2 years and what has transpired, what is going to come into the future? There's a lot of questions about how we can do our work remotely and how effective is it. So who wants to share their experience? Or shall I say this? Let me ask this. How many people here are still working remotely on their own? Just raise your hand. Or part-time.
Part-time.
And how many people are part-time in the office, part-time remote?
Sorry.
And then how many here is all back in the office all the time? That'd be G. All right. So who wants to share their experience?
Oh, you want to start?
No, go ahead, Cody. Go.
All right. I think when we first started, it was a little bit dramatic because all the stuff at Pokemon is so top secret. They were really worried about us taking all of our super secret work homes. There was a lot of skepticism from the higher up people of like, is this going to work? Are people going to get their jobs done? We had meetings like every day that I checked in, like, what did you do today? You working over there? And that was kind of an interesting like beginning of that. But as time went on, everyone was very productive and the company was very successful. And it's kind of interesting to be on the other side of that now. As people are starting to go back to the office, they're going to do a hybrid model where you'll be in 3 days out of the week and 2 days are optional to be in the office. And it seems like some people are excited about it. Some people are leaving to find other jobs. And I think that's something we'll probably see a lot of like just people kind of figuring out what works best for them. Because I don't think there is one right answer. I think there are like, different people have different preferences and different styles of working. And it has been kind of interesting to see some people jump ship to go, like, I love this job, but I realized that working from home really works for me. So I'm going to go find something that will allow me to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo off of Cody. Like there was a time because we were in the middle of a launch of our next game. So we were having to we're highly secretive. We're a subdivision of Microsoft, so it was difficult at first. We went through some growing pains to move everybody remotely. But we were able to succeed. Right now, as people know, Microsoft is migrating to a hybrid work environment. It's going on a team by team basis. Some individuals are going fully remote. Some people have actually left the state already. And some teams are going in just for like once or twice a week. It's going on a team by team basis. But there was some difficulties because it was so sudden for everybody. But I really enjoy working remotely, and for me, I completely went to a different country during that time, and it's worked out for me.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different story. I was actually already remote because of the nature of my job. So I run my own business. So it was always out of my house or at a coffee shop, or I'm at client sites. So I never really had a home base. I did when I worked in corporate, where I was a corporate graphic designer. And even then that was remote because the office was down in Portland and I was in Seattle. So it was like very virtual. We used to do conference calls though. So Zoom is actually a relatively new thing in the last 2 years, which I really, really enjoy being able to see people's faces. It kind of replicates kind of the person-to-person magic that happens when you're collaborating, which conference calls don't have. But yeah, so in terms of like how the work has shifted during the last 2 years due to the pandemic, the I think like there was a lot of anxiety and uncertainty around it. But I want to kind of like put forward like something that was bright, and the bright thing is like our work became more accessible to folks and to us. We were able to do work that we wouldn't have been able to do. Like for instance, we were able to work with clients that weren't based in Seattle, even though a lot of our clients are. We were able to work with folks on the East Coast, in Europe, wherever, because it kind of like the virtual workspace opened the doors for that kind of collaboration. So I would say that our work became like richer for that, and we met a lot of like new people, and our horizons were broadened. But yeah, all of the kind of challenges of working remotely were still there. Sometimes when you are not face to face with a person, you lose like certain body languages, certain gestures, non-verbal cues that you would get from folks in talking about the work, that you just doesn't translate as much in Zoom. Like you don't hear people laugh, you don't hear people sigh, you don't hear people. Sometimes you don't see people smile. So those ways we've had to kind of adapt a lot of our like working styles, a lot of our feedback gathering. So yeah, a lot of stuff like that.
I'll go next. So I'm completely in the office right now. It kind of didn't start that way. Obviously, like we were completely remote, and then it kind of shifted to a week in the office, a week remote, and we kind of had like an A and B group that we would sort of shift out, and then it was in the office with masks, and now we got like a good rate of vaccinated everyone. So yeah, I mean, as most creatives, I have a pretty short attention span, and I like having a place to go to work. That being said, it is really nice to have the option, and it's a little bit more like normal now to work remote, and we have it worked out where we can access our work server wherever we are. But yeah, I think like the pandemic also made me really pay attention to my mental health, because that was really hard for me to sort of separate work and like my work office and like home, and just like it all kind of bled into one another. So if anyone has any questions about that kind of stuff, please feel free to ask.
So we started out,
Is everybody-
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So we started out completely remote back in August of 2020, and gradually since the beginning of this year, we've been heading back to the office, hybrid, 1 day a week, 2 days a week. Now I'm 3 days a week. I was resistant to it at first, but now I'm glad we're back in the office, partially for what Dara mentioned of the mental health issues, and also just the collaboration. I miss that. I miss being able to have somebody come to my computer and help me out with something, rather than try to explain it through a series of chats. We have different levels of productivity. I think I'm more productive in the office. Like company-wide, all departments, our department is one of the only ones that is still hybrid, just because productivity went down so much in so many of the other departments that they have to come back. So it depends a lot just on the people and the type of work. But I'm preferring being in office. Back to you, Min.
Well, yeah. But I think there's, thank you for all of that, because I think there's, as we know now, things are shifting. People are coming back to the office. People are having the option to do so. And I think the one thing that we talked about before we got on this call was about collaboration, because the collaborating part can happen within an online environment. It's just different. But it's really, you don't get the social cues when you're remote all the time. A couple of questions here from Viliami here and this is for anybody. Regarding portfolio, because I designed this panel to be part of the portfolio class for Visual Communications 250. For those of you who are not in the class, this is what my regular meeting for this for my students. So we open it up for everybody else to come in just to give some information. Is your portfolio continuously growing? Have you worked on it recently? Would it include career work, or do you make time to do your own design work? So I think this is a great question for the portfolio folks out there, for those who are, in this first year of the program, understand about what the portfolio is and the importance of the portfolio. So your thoughts on the portfolio, anybody?
So I will say that I don't do any design work just for fun to add to my portfolio. I do keep a folder, even though I don't have a formal portfolio. I do have a folder where I keep projects from my current job that I'm proud of, and also freelance work, so that if I am doing a job search and need to update my portfolio, it's right there. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, like when you're kind of working like a full-time job, to keep up on that. But I've kind of been like slowly trying to do it, and keep track of, the projects that I've been working on. As far as like personal work, it's not necessarily like design work, but I do like illustration, animation, that kind of stuff on my own time, just for like my own sanity, because, if it becomes all work all the time, it kind of just like takes a lot out of me. So I kind of have to make that like the balance. And yeah, some of that stuff does go into my portfolio.
I will say it's been my PDF portfolio. I've probably worked on that in the last 2 years. I do take I take about maybe 3 to 4 freelance gigs a year, just because I'm so busy with work. My website, though, I probably haven't updated in like 8 years. It's because of the 9 to 5, and like most of my freelance is coming to me now, and I just want, somebody hits me up and they're like, "Hey, I was referred to you by so-and-so. I saw your work that you did with them. I'd like you to do some stuff for us. Can you send us some recent examples of your work?" And I'm like, all right, that's why I have that PDF portfolio ready to go. I do really need to go redo my website though.
Yeah, I will say that like doing like in the process of like doing my portfolio, I got into like, it's called like Webflow. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but it is a really good like sort of blank templated site, and it kind of forced me. A lot of the stuff I learn is through like forced requirement stuff, where I'm just like, I'm just gonna have to like learn Adobe XD or learn like how to design a website because I need to make my portfolio. So I just like, I take those opportunities to kind of like build my skill set as well. It's a little hack there for you.
And one thing in terms of continuously growing, it is growing, but it's being more curated as time goes on. It's not turning into like an 80-page portfolio. It's just becoming more focused on individuals or the type of industry that I'm going to be doing work in. So yeah, it's not a massive, like, I don't think phone books exist anymore, but it's not a massive phone book portfolio.
Yeah, I'm working on mine right now. I was working on it yesterday. I think that's like, for me, it's probably like every like 2 or 3 years, because I feel like I want to get some freelance jobs, or because I'm actively looking for a new job, is usually the motivator to go boost up the portfolio again. But it is kind of interesting to go back through it and be like, all right, what am I adding? What am I going to cut this time? And very much building it, like, I think especially as time goes on, you kind of build it out for the sort of like either the gigs or the job that you really want, and you kind of curate everything for that. It used to be just stuff I was proud of in a general sense, but now it's like I want to do more illustration type work or this or that, and I like kind of put a big focus on displaying that stuff specifically, because there is, after doing this for like 10 years or however long, it's like you end up with a pretty big library of work to choose from after a while.
Yeah, you start to forget stuff that you did.
Oh my God, yeah. I went down a big nostalgia hole of looking at old files and stuff, and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot about so many of these projects.
And then there's the whole aspect like, oh, did I make that? That does not look as good as it could be. Or you look at it and like, wow, that was amazing. Where did I come up with that? How did I make that? Yeah.
Yeah, I find that I'm gradually replacing my school projects with real world projects.
Yeah, so because I basically do project-based work, I don't have like one. Well, actually, we have a few clients that we do regular work for, but generally it's really project-based work and it's branding work. So our portfolio in our world is super duper important. That said, we don't update it as very much anymore. We used to. So this is the thing that you'll probably learn over the course of like 10 years is that at the beginning, your portfolio is super duper important if you want to kind of do this type of work, like a lot of conceptual ideation work. If that's kind of the area you want to go to, your portfolio is going to be super duper important. And so when earlier in my career, I was working on my portfolio constantly, and I also have multiple portfolios. Like there's a web design portfolio, there's a social media portfolio, there's an illustration portfolio, there's an infographic portfolio. I just ended up making them to cater to the client because like a client that wants to hire you for illustration doesn't want to see all the other shit, right? So that way you could show like a good variety of work without just busting out like 80 pages. And also the portfolio is not necessarily needed to be like, it doesn't necessarily have to show your competence. So that's my hack. We always want to be like, this is like the best of my technical abilities. And but if you're not doing like strictly technical work, if you're doing like very creative work, your portfolio just needs to tell a story and it could be very short and it just needs to have big impact. So if your portfolio is like, my portfolio is sometimes is literally like just a really elaborate, you know, bit of like UI paired with illustration. It's very simple on the back end, but people don't know how it's built and they're like really impressed by it. And a lot of times I get hired based on that. And it's wild. So that's the trick I figured out. And so that's a way to shortcut like always having to update something. But then at some point, like Edward said, people don't ask for your credentials anymore because you kind of develop a reputation over time. And so they'll just kind of hire you based on nothing, which is nuts. And also your looks different too. We always think of like, oh, here's actually a portfolio. It used to be actually a booklet that you give people. It used to be like a PDF. It still is. My portfolios are like PDFs on Google Drive that I just send people a link like, here you go. But your portfolio is also your website. People go to your website and then they feel a certain way about you and they might hire you based on how they feel on your website. Your portfolio is also your social media. I get a lot of work through my social media where people are like, oh, you seem like you're a cool, fun person. I want to work with you. That's what I'm saying. Your technical skills sometimes don't matter. Sometimes it's just like, I like you. So if you can kind of like push that out there and like be authentic, that's like huge if you want to be doing the kind of work that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to get to a question here in a second here, Miranda, but the idea is that how many folks in this room have gotten work, freelance work or regular, your part of your career work from your social media? Raise your hand. Yeah, so social media is a huge presence, and random people have contacted me, asking me if I want to do some projects. I was like, oh, okay. How'd you find me? So yeah, and so having that presence, and now, there was a time, I'm old enough to know that the physical portfolio is what you brought into a meeting, and now everything can be done digitally. And it is about storytelling. It is, you telling your story through your work and through your actual telling stories of how you do your work and how you approach your projects. I had a question here from Miranda. This is for anybody, directed to Gia, but for anybody who's willing to answer. How did or are you coping with mental health issues and organizing your work time with life at home? There are challenges staying on task at home, which is why ideally some people like to go in the office because they can stay on task. And so, any advice or tips on about working from home or working remotely or doing both?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. Yeah, like I said, I think the whole pandemic lockdown really made me sort of hone in on my own mental health, and I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people. One of those ways I coped was I started going to therapy. I know it's not as accessible to just go see a therapist, and sometimes it's hard to find one, with that, I know there's like a few different kind of resources that are not necessarily like a talk therapist. Like there's sort of online things where you're essentially texting somebody, just whatever works for you and I mean your budget. And then I think like with working at home, I really try to kind of create like a comfortable environment, but not too comfortable, if that makes sense. Like I sit next to a heater, or I'll like light a candle, or I'll like listen to a podcast I like. And I really try to separate, I try to make like it be like, this is my desk and this is like not like whatever, you know, like where I put my laundry sometimes or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I also think like another tip that I've been given is just uh, I think it's about for every like 30 minutes of work to go like maybe take a walk or like do something that's like step away from it for a second and then go back to it. Even using like a timer, like maybe even like a 30-minute timer, and just be like, I'm going to be completely focused on work and then I'm going to take a little break. So that way you don't burn yourself out, which is very common in this career. Um, but yeah, that's all I have really.
And I'd like to add that if, as a student, there are free counseling services at the college that I used when I was there. That was very helpful. Something I did during the past year that helped me, if you have space, I had my desk in my bedroom and I moved it out into another room. If you can like separate your workspaces from where you spend most of your off work time, that is helpful too. Gets you sort of into that mindset of I'm going to work, even though it's only in the next room.
Yeah, so the first year that I started working for myself and I was outside the office, I was very depressed because I didn't have like good work habits. I would go to work in the dark. I would have a lot of anxiety because I didn't know what the future held. And then I would go finish work in the dark. And I did that days on end, and it was just a huge bummer, and I got really depressed. So it took years, but over time, what helps to be in therapy, but what you get from therapy is just like that self-awareness. So the self-awareness of like what works for you. So this is not like a one size fits all answer, but what worked for me is just creating structure. I don't work in bed anymore. I don't work on the couch anymore. Ergonomics is so important. So taking care of your body too. I have a dedicated space to work. I wake up every day at the same time. I go to work every day at the same time. I set meetings. I start meetings every day at the same time, so that I'm accountable to people. Like you have to show up to your meetings, so that helps create the structure. And then I end work every day around the same time. I don't work like late at night like I used to. And so that's just setting a boundary. Setting a boundary with yourself is setting a boundary with the folks that you're working with. If folks are like, yo, can you turn this in tomorrow? And you'd be like, no, bro, I cannot.
Yes.
Yeah, developing
Yes,
structure, I
absolutely.
100%,
Yeah.
100%,
The
Stacey. All that.
boundaries. We love boundaries. And
Boundaries
it's
are
really
good.
hard because sometimes you'll be working. I've found myself a lot of times like I would look at the clock 1 minute and it's 3 o'clock, and then the next time I look at it it's like 7, and then people are still like asking me for things, and just like being okay, like especially if you're hourly too, like just like say no.
Yeah.
It's really like I think there's been this kind of sort of hustle culture that's taught us that it's like you have to say yes to everything, otherwise you're going to miss out on opportunities. But it's absolutely okay to say no, and to like I think what Stacey said was a super good tip of like staying on a schedule, especially when you're completely at home, because like time really gets away from you, and if you kind of let it slip, then you kind of lose the structure in your life, which I think is super important.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, I've had some sort of work from home environment. I mean, my first years as a freelance designer or photographer, I lived in my same house. Everything was in the same house, but it really over time, especially during the pandemic, draw the boundaries and hold the line, and be able to say no. No is a great word. It doesn't, and what I've learned is that not to say no, but really say not at this time, because it's a way of saying no for the moment, but maybe later when there's more time available. And you can always push things off, because it's not, their imperative is not your imperative, but you have to be imperative of drawing your boundaries. Like in my office right here, like, I could touch this back wall, which is the separator between my school work office. Here's the next wall right here, which I can touch. And then there's the other wall. So I'm in this like little 16 square foot space, which is just my school space within my own studio. When I first started the pandemic, it was like the entire studio became this college workspace. And after a while, I was like, this ain't working for me. I want to shove everything to a corner and do it from here and then have my other studio space going. But I think that, mental health, you can get burned out in this career very easily. I've been burned out numerous times, and setting boundaries is scheduling everything, not working at night like I used to, because I have other things to do, and you have to, separate your time. But thank you for all those tips. I think there's, it's a constant experiment. I don't know if for those of you who talked earlier, it's like, it's a little, you got to tweak it every now and then and got to revisit it. One recommendation I would have for folks is meditation. During the pandemic, I started getting into transcendental meditation, which is a different type of meditation practice. It's not religious based. It's nothing based in some sort of spiritual guide, or is a much different approach to meditation. And sometimes just being aware of yourself, which is what transcendental meditations help me, can really tap into your creativity once you learn about yourself as much as possible. I got a question here from Sean.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Anybody want to add?
I think I don't meditate particularly, but I think at least the kind of person I am, and maybe it's like a creative person thing, or maybe you're the same, but I find it really hard sometimes when I get home to like just let myself relax, and like, because there are even times where I'm just watching TV and I'm drawing, which I do enjoy, but also it's really hard for me to just do nothing, which is sort of kind of the basis of meditation, is to just like take a moment and just like kind of like let that stuff go. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah,
I feel the same way. It's hard for me to disconnect, but I think the interesting thing about transcendental meditation, my little spiel on this, is that you don't really have to disconnect, because your brain, you can't shut off your brain. There's no way you can think of nothing in meditation. You just have to be able to ride it and let it go, because that thought will change in about half a minute anyway, to something else. And then eventually you'll get to a space to where it's, I guess I would say, serene or calm, and then you're just not really thinking that much anymore. And I think that's the real thing about meditation. Everything, you have to go into this nirvana state. It's not the point. It's because your brain, you can't shut off your brain. If we did, then we wouldn't be here. Go ahead, Eddie.
Oh yeah, I was saying, like, for me, it's I'll go on walks and leave all technology at home, just be in the moment, just like take in visual input from the things around me rather than like being connected to a device or something. And just, that's something that I've had to do for myself, because we're so technology reliant nowadays that that's the only way I was able to like completely unplug, is by just leaving all my devices at home and just going on an honest walk and just ingesting all that information visually from the world around me. And that was one way I was able to clear my head.
Quite a bit, at least once or twice a day. I'll get like an hour-long walk. I was like leaving my phone at home. That's my little meditation.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna answer Sean's question. Is it more common to start a career as a part of a graphic design firm or as a freelancer? I sort of did. A lot of us did what's in between. It's as part of a creative department of a different corporation. So not a sole design firm, but not freelance either. So that's another big option out there.
Yeah, that's a great place to get started. I feel like you learn it working in-house somewhere. I I did some freelance stuff and I did some like a lot of personal projects at the very beginning. Only because I kept applying for jobs and you're in that catch-22 of like, you don't have experience, but how do you get experience until you get a job? To which I think just if you can't get freelance gigs either, just give yourself jobs. Give yourself the job that you wish you had if you want to work like in the gaming world, like just make a project. But once I got my first job, that was like I learned so much and that definitely got me down the road.
And joining
I
like
think
like
I can also.
oh sorry,
Sorry.
I'll be real quick. There's also like there's like you can join like organizations like the AIGA to like learn things from people that are in the industry as well. Sometimes they will provide you with information that you'd be surprised with. And then there's a lot of like creative placement agencies in Seattle. Like, I think might have mentioned these like Creative Circle, Creative Group, all of these things that they'll try to assist you in placing you into a role that fits your portfolio at that time. As well to help you get like, because sometimes they're looking for more junior designers. But go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, just to tack on to all of that, like, there's not necessarily like a normal, which is something I kind of had to learn myself just working in the, like, as a designer, is like, there's not like a sort of linear, like, correct path, and everyone's kind of on their own timeline. And just to remember that, because I know it can get really discouraging. I think everyone kind of starts out different. I think it seems like everyone is like getting like jobs like as an in-house. But it's not always that way. And it's like, I was working in restaurants like and having to like apply to jobs at night, and it was really hard. But yeah, I would say like, I would say just maybe start with like doing what you like, or like, let's say there's something out there that you're like, I can design that better. Like, for example, if there's like a website and you're like, that is a really terrible website, maybe you like redesign it and like reach out to them and be like, hey, like, what do you think of this? And that could lead to something, or not, but who knows?
But it goes in your portfolio, right?
It does go in your portfolio.
Yeah. And so the idea of like, creating your own projects, it's this what we commonly known as spec work, SPEC, or speculative. It's just a project that's just made up for you to practice your skills and to say, hey, I can do this better than, this other, I can design this better than the other design that you have. But it goes in your portfolio, and it's perfectly fine to have spec work in your portfolio.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It
that.
also shows initiative.
I was gonna say that right now I know it's really competitive. Well, this is not right now. This field is always competitive. So I imagine whatever your first job is, it's just kind of like what you get. But what you'll discover with the second and third job is that you'll find jobs that adapt or that fit who you are. So there's no like, most people do this, most people do that. Folks who go in-house are folks that tend to like being in a community and being with the same team and having that kind of like stability and seeing the growth of things over time. I hate that. I couldn't stand being in-house. So that's why I kind of ended up doing my own thing. I love meeting people and then saying bye, like after a couple months. And if that's you, maybe that's what you'll end up doing. And then folks that really love to like, torture themselves go into design firms. But no, I mean like folks that really like to like do a lot of churn and like really like the competitive environment, they might go into the design firm. So it really depends on who you are and what your personality is. If you're a person that's like, yeah, then maybe that's you. If your person be like, no man, I just want to do my work and I just want to do cool things with dope people, maybe it's in-house. Or you're like, I don't want to have connections to anybody, then maybe you're a serial freelancer.
Serial freelancer, I like that. I like that.
Freelancer.
Yeah, cool.
Internships are also a good way.
Yeah, internships are a great place to kind of get an idea,
Yeah.
if you will, a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't take an unpaid internship.
Don't do it.
It's not worth it.
Don't encourage these people.
Yeah, I know it took me a while to get my first job out of college. It took me almost a year. I was working at Fred Meyer in between. But I've been at this job like 6 years now. I love it. I have made connections. I currently am starting a long-term freelance job for one of my former coworkers while she's on maternity leave. Another coworker has given me the lead on a job that's opening up in a few months that I'm gonna, go for. So it's like, once you get in, things just sort of branch from there.
Right. And that's an important
So
topic
that's-
is connections, is networking with other folks. And I think, how many people here have gotten, either a freelance gig or a job opportunity, a career opportunity from somebody you knew? Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of it's about, if you do good work for somebody will recognize it and they'll help you along by passing your name along to somebody else. So that's part of that connection that we have to have with folks. Yeah, I mean, this is a great topic. These are great topics we've had before. So let me ask you this, folks, since we don't have any questions in the chat box. What
There is more.
Yeah, we do, man.
Actually, Luis, I'm sorry. Let me scroll up. So Luis says, my same question is, where do you see yourselves in 5 years? And where do you see the creative arts in 5 years? This whole industry.
I think this industry is still growing. I think there's more and more opportunities for creatives now than there were when I started even. I think this is one of the careers that was able to hold fast through the pandemic. You know what I mean? There were still opportunities coming in during that time, whereas a lot of certain industries suffered. The creative individuals in the creative industry, whether you were freelance or at a firm or anything, we were having to support other industries during that time. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on where you are in your life. For me, I'm older. This is a second career for me. In 5 years, I still see myself doing print design like I'm doing now, maybe at a better place, I love where I work, maybe at a different place, making more money, but I don't see myself branching out and learning whole new skills at this point in my life. I just want to make it to retirement.
I don't want to retire too. Go ahead.
I think in the next 5 years, like I'm kind of at a point in my career right now where I've kind of been honing in my skills, and I'm still continuously like learning new ones, just like stuff that I want to do for fun, and it's kind of building my skill set. And I think my advice in that sort of thing would just be like, you're not like married to any sort of company or any sort of thing, and really like use them as much as they're using you. That's probably a terrible way to put it, but I'm taking like opportunities and projects to like learn new skill sets. In 5 years, I'd really hope that I'm like building leadership skills. Like I really love like teaching and learning younger designers and interns. Like that's something I really want to like push forward for myself.
I don't know if you're asking this question, Louise, because you feel a certain anxiety about the future, which is normal, but I'm going to assume that's the case, and I'll answer in that direction. So when I was younger, and I was new in my career, I was full of anxiety, and I just wanted to prove myself all the time, and I wanted to I had these benchmarks, like I was going to be a creative director at X age, I was going to make money at X age, I was going to do this at X age. And as I've gotten older, that's fallen by the wayside. I don't plan anything. And so you don't have to. I don't know what I'm going to do next year. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I don't know. Well, actually, I do know what I'm going to do tomorrow. This is on my calendar. But I don't plan ahead. I have a business, but I don't have a 5-year plan. It is what it is. And, and that's how it's been for the last maybe like 6 years. Just kind of going through intuition, just checking in with my gut, seeing what feels right, and then just going with it, and then just throwing your hands up in the air and be like, it is what it is, And at the end of the day, if you can pay your bills, that's my baseline goal, just pay my bills and making it to retirement like Tracy.
That's fair, for sure. I know, I feel like I'm in a spot too where like, I hit this kind of point in my career where like, I feel like I'm in kind of a cushy spot, and like, as far as like working in-house for a company goes, I'm like, this is fine. I don't think it gets much better than this. I'm paid fairly, the work is reasonable. And I think like what changes I might make in the future would like now I'm in a place where I'm like, do I want to do something I care about more? Like, do I want to spend more of my time doing things I'm passionate about, or am I okay not being passionate and just showing up to work and getting a paycheck, and having so much more energy for like my personal creative projects, or like original, just like drawing and painting and stuff. Like I don't know, I can have like personal goals in that sense too, of like creative things that I want to be accomplishing, and then my job becomes sort of a like, well, is my job enabling me to get closer to those goals?
And I think what you've learned, hopefully that you've caught on from each of the panelists, is that everybody's collecting things, well, work that they're doing, and putting it in their folder. Just have it as an archive. 1A, this is the work I've done. 2B, ready when you're ready to jump ship and go and take your portfolio out shopping, because that's where your work comes from and how your work evolves. So all of these folks may not be using their portfolio right now, but archiving that work, putting it in a folder, and getting it ready when they're ready to jump ship and ready to move on to a different career path, they have their work ready to go. So always collect your work. So Tracy has put on here that Sound Publishing is hiring a creative artist for those who are graduating. So just look up Sound Publishing, and I'm sure you can find all the information along the way. Miranda asked, do you folks have career goals, and what are your plans to reach those goals, to advance your career as you're moving forward, try to make sure that you have reached retirement?
Well, if I was going to say if I had a dream,
Yeah.
my dream would be like to be a well enough known designer where companies that I dreamt about working for would just hit me up and be like, yo, we want you to work on this. You want to make a shoe? Yo, can you make a shoe for us? You know what I mean? Can you do this for us? Can you collaborate with us because of that? I'm not nowhere near there, but that's my dream. That's what I hope to hit. That point where I'm like, just like anybody just hits me up, like and then I'm like, I can just turn down projects. Like, no, I don't want to work for Toyota. I don't want to do something for you. I'm too busy over here working with, I don't know, like Nike, or I'm over here doing a collab with the NBA. You know what I mean? I would love to get to that point. That's my dream. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is a job. I don't want to be known. I want to be making money to be happy with the rest of my life, to be with my kids and do what I want to do and move to Scotland someday and that type of thing.
That's legit. I love Tracy's perspective. We need that. In counterpoint to that, so my career goals, they're not really goals in terms of like I want to do this professionally. It's just a feeling. And so I think once you start your career, what you'll realize is you'll just be making stuff for other people. You'll be having someone telling you what to do all day. And it's going to be a weight. And so my goal is always to have less of that in my life, to kind of just be able to create from a place of like my own perspective, my own like point of view, and like be able to really have more kind of control and creativity and oversight on things, and then just like really just do it in a pure way. And so that's what we're gunning it toward in our business, where we are saying no to a lot of stuff that we just don't believe in. That's just a paycheck. We are just focusing like 90% on passion projects now. And so, yeah, we're chasing a feeling. And so that's what we want, just to work with dope folks who don't hassle us, who trust us, and, to really just be able to be in an environment where you can thrive and people care about each other and, are free to just be vulnerable and creative versus like, I'm going to churn, I'm going to produce, I'm going to make things to sell things all the time.
Yeah, that is very on point. I think I'd have to absolutely agree with that, because Stacey also said before, like, it's kind of unpredictable, like, where you're going to go. You can't really control that, or like, you don't really know. And like, maybe in like 2 years, I'm going to completely change my mind about what I want to do or how I do it. But yeah, I think absolutely, like, you get to a certain point where you're just like, oh man, I don't like the way that these processes are being handled, but there's not really much you can like do about it. And I think like leading a team would be really awesome. Like I think sometimes I'm like, like I think it'd be really dope to be a teacher. I did a lot of like I did like TAing for this like summer program when I was in college, and it was like super fulfilling. And I was like, this is so sick. Like I'm not even making anything. I'm just like untangling anchor points for these high school kids that like think that they'll start out thinking that this is a really lame project, and then by the end of it they're like so into it. And that like for me it was like super good for my heart. And it wasn't necessarily me at the forefront, you know, it was just like helping someone like grow. And I think that's like ultimately what I want to do. Like I think in my own work, like I always say, like I just want to make stuff that makes me and my friends laugh. Like that's kind of the basis of it. It doesn't really matter, you know. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's about designing for good, you know, good for yourself and good for the people. And there's one more question here. We're getting close to the end of our time, so we're going to go over just a little bit. But Jim had a question here. If there was one desirable skill you wish you had strengthened more when you were in college, video illustration, etc., what would it be? And
Motion for me.
Was that? Go ahead, Eddie.
Motion, probably.
Motion.
Yeah, motion, man. But you know what? I'm too old. It's fine. But yeah, that's my regret too.
I've just started getting into motion, and I've just like After Effects and Premiere and stuff like that. And what I've learned is like it was a lot. I did a couple of classes in college, but it was a lot easier this time around when I kind of got back into it, because I had a really solid foundation of an understanding of like Illustrator and Photoshop. And then once you get to, you know, After Effects, it's basically that in motion. So I think just like really the foundation of like technical skills and being able to communicate your creative decisions, that's like a huge one for me.
And mine isn't really what I wish I would have strengthened in college. It's what I wish I would have kept up with right after graduation, and it's my web design skills. I wish I'd kept working on that and practicing it, because now it's lain dormant for 5 years. And if I were to like go for any sort of web design job, I'd be lost.
Also, randomly, photography sometimes.
Sometimes photography.
Yeah.
So a little bit of every skill. I mean, you know, you have your primary skill, and then you have your secondary skills, which can be photography, motion graphics, things like that, which always complements your primary skill. So I have one last question, and we'll wrap it up. What soft skills should students have coming into the work environment? So something away from Adobe, something away from that. So for instance, like there's a lot of soft skills that I've been encouraged to talk about a lot is how to use Google Suites, not just Google Docs, but also spreadsheets. Particularly, that's what a lot of folks will tell me. It's like, you know, project management is all kind of derived on spreadsheets or some form of spreadsheets. What soft skills have you used a lot during your career that's not really taught in the class?
Are you talking like more non-tangible things? Because I was thinking, you know, just the ability to give and take creative criticism and communication, that type of.
That's a soft skill.
Being
Yeah,
open.
that's what I was thinking too.
Being open to other people's advice and recommendations on your work without being offended.
Yeah, I think a really good one is, I don't know if it has like a name for it, but just being able to like make several different iterations and not getting married to one idea like right away. I'd say that's like, and like kind of like being really open to kind of like rough stuff out and like not getting honed in, because that way you get really stuck. I don't know if that's a soft skill, but
well, yeah, I think it's a soft skill. Variations are important. Iterations of variations, different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. There's times when even like the way that my work is structured now too, it used to be I would make a lot of iterations. Now my role is like I am just one of iteration. You know what I mean? So like me and 3 other people or 5 other people will all do the same project, and we'll all make something almost to completion. and then one of them goes to production, which can be like a little daunting
Oh,
emotionally.
dang.
Yeah, kinda, like it's sort of satisfying when it does get out there. You're like, wow, my Pikachu lunchbox is the one that hit the shelves. Good for me. But then
I won.
yeah, but then like the whole rest of the time, like it can be like a little depressing. I can be like, oh my god, I do a good job. I'm not you did a great job. It's just this is how this works here. That's just another example of kind of you build a tough skin and you don't get too attached to it. Like, and that's where I think it's so important to have those personal projects and those passion projects to like to have that thing that whatever your thing is that you're working on for yourself sometimes sure helps me if I'm in kind of a low spot at work. I have my own thing that I can actually feel good about.
I think I agree with everything everybody's saying. Another thing is being able to not be afraid to do public speaking, to be able to elaborate on your designs, to be able to talk about your process and not sound like a dumbass, because I have sounded like a dumbass like several meetings where I'm just like, I just blanked. I'm like, oh man, yeah. So yeah, I think that's an important skill.
Yeah, justifying all your choices. Like, it's not blue because you like the color blue ever. It's blue because that represents the brand strength of this market or what, like, even if it's just a lie, like, just have a reason that you make a choice. Like, if someone asks you, why is this a circle, not a rhombus? Why is this purple? Like, that's sort of a skill that you develop, I think, too, is being able to really justify your choices.
I'm going to echo what Tracy says. And remember, I do a lot of client facing work. So what is super duper important is communication. Communication is also logistical, but it's also how you make people feel. So the logistical piece of it is actually, you have to, when you go into the workforce, you have to learn this entire new language. You have to learn the email language, like how to email people back, how long the email is supposed to be, when to do it, whether to do it on the Slack channel. There are these like rules that happen at every organization that you have to learn and adapt to in order to not be a weirdo. So outside of that, the kind of like psychological side of it is that how we communicate, especially when you're doing client-facing work, is all about how you make people feel. So you always want to. It's never about like this is the best design because of all these facets. People don't care about that. It's like how are they reacting emotionally to it, and how do you communicate so that like it connects that way. And even outside of design, how do you connect with your client so that the process and the project management is smooth? How do you communicate things so that the relationship stays good and that they hire you again? How do we do all of these things? So basically just like being very conscious of like what people's feelings are, where their emotions are at, tending to it, being able to read people, just practicing your intuition and building that muscle up. Because a lot of times people don't express things very directly. If they have anxiety, if they are feeling like they don't have control over the process, they're not going to say that. They're not going to be like, yo, Stacy, I feel like you're taking too much of the control away from me, and that's why I'm responding like a crazy asshole. They're not going to say that to you. You have to intuit that. And so just building that muscle and then, tending to it, be like, yo, Sasha, I feel like maybe we should slow down, and then maybe that will make her feel better, just so practicing those things.
And that would be qualified as empathy.
Yeah, I think like being able to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like being able to kind of read subtext, because I think like a big part of being a designer, and especially a freelance designer, is that you're talking to mostly non-designers and they don't really like speak that language, and they're not gonna they're gonna tell you what they want, but it's not necessarily like the literal translation, and you kind of have to like read between the lines, be like, okay, but what do they really mean by that, and like kind of interpret it from there. And I think that's like a huge one for me, because I have to collaborate, with like the marketing department and people who don't necessarily understand what I do, but that's not like their fault.
Right.
Yeah, and in my job, we call it learning to speak sales rep.
Mm-hmm.
And all those jobs is you learn how to listen, have empathy, and read the room. And those are soft skills that one continuously develops. I'm still developing mine over time. So I want to be honored of everybody's time. I want to thank Eddie, Tracy, Cody, Gia, Stacy for being here and donating your time for this moment. Thank you everyone for being here today. It's been a great conversation. These conversations have always been full of information. and go out to your day and have a good day. Peace out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Later, guys.
All right, thanks, man. That was great. I appreciate this every time.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I feel a lot better than the first time I did it a few years ago. I feel like I actually know a little more now.
Well, this is
Tracy, you know a lot.
We're just evolving, aren't we? We're going through the steps. Thank you folks for being here. I appreciate it.
Okay, have a great rest of your day.
Yeah,
Bye, Thomas.
we'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Here, let me show you guys what I'm working with. Can
Yeah.
you see the boxes?
Damn.
Whoa, is that
Boy.
your? Wait, are you moving? Wait, I'm
I
gonna
just
stop.